So under 20, this is Matt. We're working on the higher height. As you can see, he's trying to keep his hips high, a little bit high over hurdle 1, but then he ironed it out quite nicely over hurdle 2. So hips high, lots of rhythm. We've been working really hard on the approach to hurdle 1. Matt's generally got a good start anyway, but because of the increased distance and increased height, it was work that needed to be done in addition to everything else to get it right. And he's now approaching hurdle 1 quite nicely now. So here I'm looking for whether his hips are twisting on landing. There, it seems to be running nicely down that white line. So he's running nice and straight there. So this was his start in slow motion. So as you can see, he's coming out nicely, his head's up, and then the very last stride over the hurdle is slightly shorter to get his centre of mass into the right place. So the very last stride going into hurdle 1, ever so slightly shorter, which shifts the centre of mass and makes his body smooth out over the hurdle. Again, hips nice and high. So that's under 20. And then as a senior, the athlete tends to have a lot more maturity about them. There's an increase in dialogue, what the athlete feels and what they think they need to work on, and then we tell them what they need to work on. But I've found that there's loads and loads of skills, basic skills that need to be taught at the bottom of the pyramid. And as the skills improve, it's just honing those skills and introducing more advanced skills towards the top. So that's the philosophy I've been using over the last 14 years when coaching hurdling.
My experience is mainly at university, so I'm getting those under 20s and seniors, and trying to correct mistakes then is much more difficult than when you've got those under 13s, under 15s, got a very plastic brain and a very plastic body, so their learning technique is much better. And as long as you're keeping it fun, they'll stick with it and they'll keep interested. So yeah. The foundation has to be built at these under 13, under 15, under 17. Get the technique right. You can't have too good a technique at these ages.
Yeah. So moving on, I've got some slides now where these are the main features that I work on through the age categories. I'm sure some of us have seen them before, but so in between the hurdles, my philosophy is you're in the air for about 10% of the race. You're on the ground for about 90% of the race. So in between, if you've got an okay hurdles technique, it's paramount to get in between right. As you can see here, we've got Mr. Jarrett here. Excellent form, lovely high knee, lovely angle off the hurdle, driving off the hurdle into the sprinting action in between. So his hips are high. He drives off the hurdle, as I've mentioned. His takeoff distance is of importance to get that right. If he's too far out, he may have a tendency to sky it. If he's too close, he might have a tendency to sky it if he's got to get higher over the hurdle to clear it. So that's getting that right. The start with 5 strides spaced out. That's what you work with 5 strides first, bring it into 3 when the confidence is there with your athlete. And it's a really, sorry.
So, Paul, you're saying start with 5 strides. That's start with 5 strides in between the hurdles, isn't it?
Yeah. 5 strides spaced out. Get them used to the rhythm. Start moving out the 5 strides. When they're confident at a distance that's close to the 3-stride distance, then put the hurdles on the 3-stride marks, bring them in a little bit, and then do the same routine where you start with bring them in a little bit, and then gradually move them out to the 3-stride markers. I've always found as well that if your athlete's doing an endurance session over the hurdles, say 2 10s, 2 8s, 2 6s, for example, it's going to be really difficult for them to keep a natural rhythm on the 3-stride markers. So I tend to, even at under 20, last 3, 4, 5 hurdles, depending on what stage of the year you're at, bring them in a little bit. Don't be afraid to bring them in, because then your athlete's still maintaining that rhythm. I think rhythm is more important than keeping them on the markers. And then towards the end of the session, they're bounding towards the next hurdle because they're just that tired. They can't make the distance. So always be mindful to bring them in.
Yeah, I then experience that with 4 hurdles where, the stride pattern is so important in 4 hurdles that we, in April, I remember we were on tour and we were so far off on hurdle 5 that it was a psychological barrier for the athlete. But 2 weeks later, they were in competition, they were flying over them. So, yeah, don't be afraid to move the hurdles off so you get the rhythm right,
Yeah.
And the speed. The speed won't be there for most of the year either, will it? So,
no.
It's difficult to make those distances if the speed's not there.
Absolutely, yeah. So the next slide is showing the takeoff angles. So the point of takeoff is obviously really important, but equally as important, I think, is the lead leg going into the hurdle. As you can see, you've got the start of the parabolic curve, and the knee on the point of takeoff on the top diagram is correct. It's up high. His ankle joint is tucked underneath his knee joint. So it's a nice closed lever, and it's a fast lever. And once that eventually kicks out, he's got a nice flat curve over the hurdle. If the lead knee opens up too early, like in the diagram below, his lock knee raises his centre of gravity. So once it's opened up, it's kind of got nowhere to go but upwards until gravity takes over and brings him down. So his parabolic curve will be higher and longer. So his clearance height will be higher, so he'll be in the air longer, and he'll be taking more time in the air and running slower. So same with the trail. The high points in the diagram should be roughly just before the hurdle. So the high point should be on the hurdle, obviously, otherwise you'll hit it. So the parabolic curve is nice and smooth there. The distances, it's a longer distance before the hurdle than off the hurdle. He or she should be snapping the hurdle leg down off the hurdle because to get him into running. Because once he's into running, he's moving or she's moving. That information I've taken from Brent McFarlane, really good book, which I'll talk about later. Brent McFarlane, very good book.
So you'd be stressing this all through each age group?
Yes.
The right approach to the hurdle with the right knee or correct knee and getting your high point, and presumably at each age group you want the optimum parabolic curve.
Yes.
I presume like for some girls that are really tall at a young age, that's going to be quite easy.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. As we've seen at international level, you've got some great women hurdlers technically, but you've also got some not so good women hurdlers that have got great flat speed, and they do equally as well, if not better, in some cases. Gail Devers, case in point. So, So moving on to the next one. So once they're over the hurdle, if their leg extension has opened out too soon, so this is what's happening, their high point or centre of mass is too high. That's figure A there. The body centre thrust is too high, which causes them to over-rotate. And also more energy is used because you're coming from a higher height. You're going to hit the ground harder. More energy is used to try and bring your body off that ground into the next stride. So figure B, much smoother. The trail leg is more parallel. He's lower over the hurdle. His centre of mass is lower. So he's going to hit the ground not as hard. He's going to be in a better position to run off the hurdle. So it's of parallel importance to get paramount importance to get that first stride right going into that hurdle.
But both these have got an excessive body lean going over the hurdle, which is adult male technique.
Yes.
When you've got young boys under 15, under 17, under 13, are you still teaching mature hurdle technique, or is it just the optimum for the age group?
I think the optimum for the age group. And it's body specific as well, isn't it? At the moment, I've got an under 13 hurdler that's extremely tall for his age. He doesn't lean too much over the hurdle because he doesn't have to. He's up and over the hurdle very smoothly and into his running. And at this stage, I don't want to over-exaggerate that lean. I don't think it's necessary at this time.
And presumably the same with young girls and women.
Yeah.
You don't need that excessive body lean. So
I don't think so. I think girls do not have to really lean into the hurdle as much as the men, purely because it's lower and the distances in between, etc. Yeah. This one is one that really interests me. Hurdle 1 approach. At the end of the day, the start to hurdle 1 sets you up for the race. You accelerate up to hurdle 3, and then you're maintaining speed for as long as you can. So to get hurdle 1 right is possibly the most important part of the race. So under 13, under 15, the norm is 8 strides to hurdle 1. I have known a couple of athletes use 9. I've had the odd athlete use 7. But 8 is generally seen as the accepted norm. I had one guy at the moment who, when he was under 15, did 7 strides to hurdle 1. For some strange reason, I didn't pick up in my mind that when we moved on to 100 hurdles under 17, and he carried on using his 7 strides, and his times and his approach to hurdle 1 wasn't great compared to how he was the year before. And I was scratching my head thinking, what's going on here? It's okay. It's just the change in height and distance. Let's keep plugging away. And then the light bulb came on. Well, his dad told me, he's using 7. And I couldn't believe what an elementary error I'd made. But put my hands up. We changed it to 8 strides. He went from, I think, 8:47 using 7 strides, and then a couple of weeks later, just with a couple of weeks worth of training at 8 strides with his blocks further back to get a comfortable 8 in, he ran 8:20 something, which was, to me, absolutely amazing. But I was kicking myself for not spotting such an easy thing to fix. So going back to the slide. Block settings are really important. It's a completely different start to a flat race because you've got to get your hips up to hurdle 1, and you can't necessarily use the drive phase like you do in sprinting with you. A lot of people these days are driving out the blocks with their heads down. You can't do that, the hurdle 1, because you'll just crash into it. You've got to get up and you've got to be spotting that hurdle early so you go over it without putting the brakes on, so to speak. So block settings are important, making sure that you're not getting the athlete to necessarily pop up off their first stride. He's got to be using the blocks effectively, but 3 strides out, they've got to be up looking at that first hurdle, making sure that their strides are right going into it.
So, Paul, just you've got age groups where you're going 8 strides to the first hurdle, then you've got another age group when you're going 7 strides, and then you go back to 8. Yeah. Does that cause problems, or how do you deal with that? Or do this?
Definitely, yeah. It's something that is obviously athlete specific. Some athletes just cruise straight through 8 strides all the way through. Some athletes go 7, 8, 7, etc. It's getting to that first hurdle comfortable, smoothly, and as quickly as possible. And it's the coach's job really to identify it and think, right, this needs to change. In my instance, it could have changed a bit earlier from 7 to 8 with Matt's case. So getting that first hurdle right is of paramount importance. And I tend to, if they're in their second year, work on that after their big race of that season. Start working on looking at the next race and the next strides and everything like that.